What's good with the YouTube with Convicts Perspective? It's your boy, Big Flacco, smashing, dashing, sliding on through with what? Little bit of energy, man. Okay, YouTube. So we're going to get into an interesting topic that Rojo brought to my attention, man. What we're going to be discussing today is the true end game objectives of the Nuestra Familia. Not just the criminal enterprise, not just the establishing of regiments through illicit means, but the end game of what each Familiano end game ideologies that they have for this organization to push forward. A lot of times we're guided in the sense of direction that it's all supposed to be through illicit means, but there's also bigger objectives that Rojo's going to discuss on here, and then we're going to give our perspective of.
All right, man. Like Flacco said, man, most people, when they think NF, they think organized crime, they think murders, they think nothing but negativity. And as the news and indictments will show you, man, that's been, the driving force of the organization for many years. However, that's not the sole intention. There's a lot of goals that a lot of people don't know, they're not familiar with, even current members probably. And what it is, okay, you established the NF in prison. That's been established since the 70s. Came out in 68, established, running prisons by 70, bro. You know what I mean? So that's done. Once firmly established on the inside, the goal is to expand to the outside and become a strong self-supporting familia. Self-supporting meaning totally independent, not relying on anybody else for anything, financially, emotionally, anything, bro. It's supposed to be a total unit that can take care of all of its own members and the members' families by way of the member. The way to do this is you establish the streets. You guys all know we've talked about street activities, regiment functions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All illicit. All we've spoken on really is all the illicit things. The goal has always been positive. And unfortunately, it hasn't gone in that direction yet. But these positives, man, I'll tell them to you. All the illegal proceeds that were ever made through regiment activities, once all the banks were up to par, and at times they have been, or real close, all those illicit funds were to be changed. They were no longer to go back into recopying substances or weapons, anything of that nature. Weaponry is already up to par, all that's up to par. Now, the goal is to go into legitimate business, to take all the sacrifices, all the hard work, all the losses, all the prison time, all the blood, sweat, and tears, and put those into businesses that can never be taken away. A lot of things that were discussed, man, trucking businesses, restaurants, bars, auto type places, sound places. And the goal was eventually for every familiano leaving prison going to the streets, they would never have to commit another crime. They would be taken out to the streets and they'd be in charge of a business or involved in a business with great pay, a corporate-like structure. The goals were to no longer necessarily only find familianos in places like Pelican Bay and AdSegs and level 4s. It was to go into the community and talk to people, businessmen, attorneys, accountants, people of that nature, people of that stature. And while you're maybe not necessarily recruiting them all the way over as to being, an NF member, making them the new type of associates that we seek, the new allies that we seek, in order to move all the funds, because it's not easy to wash money, especially nowadays. Maybe in the 70s, it was probably pretty simple. Nowadays, there's so many paper trails, so many requirements, so many people all in your business, IRS, everybody's in your business. And there's so many financial footprints left everywhere. But the goal is to find people who could make this happen, to find people who already know people with money to say, hey, look, we have this kind of cash on hand. Maybe you could hold this cash, write us a check for this business. We'll become partners, and then slowly you just disappear and it becomes ours. And we would look for attorneys and accountants to make this seem above board, and which it is. I mean, the initial monies, of course, are got for illicit means. But as soon as these businesses are acquired and running legally, there will be no laundering, no No, it will be ran totally above the board, taxes paid, appropriate insurances for the businesses, the liability for workers, et cetera, workers' comp, no matter what it might be, it was going to be totally above the board. Once you establish a couple businesses, it's easy to get credit. You pay your damn bills. You know what I'm saying? You pay bills, and you're now under what's called an EIN. It's an employee identification number, which is a social security for businesses. You can build credit on that EIN number. You have a nice business. Let's just call it a nightclub with a restaurant. Restaurant during the day, nightclub at night, dancing stage. It's a cash cow, especially if it's a good one, if it's in a nice area where the homies are kind of in charge. You know what I'm saying? All the other homies will start going there spending money. There'll be security up the ass. There'll be metal detectors. There'll be all this shit. Because the first thing that gets the nightclub shut down, is violence, shootings, dress code in effect, all that. Professional. You get a couple businesses like that, then you go to the bank and you be like, hey, we want to open another restaurant. This restaurant's been extremely successful here in, let's call it Salinas. We'd like to open a chapter of this restaurant, another, franchise in San Jose. They look at your numbers. You got a legal loan now. You pay off your fucking loan. You don't let nothing go wrong. Period. There are strict rules. And it's ran legally. If you break the rules, there's no violence. There's your last check. You get what I'm saying? So these goals, while they have been sort of implemented at some points in time, homies had a couple little businesses here and there. It's never taken off on a statewide corporate type level. We get a lot of truckers on here. And, people are probably like, oh man, this is boring. Okay, think about this. You own a truck. A truck is always running. You can't stop the flow of commerce. Trucking is a very good industry, especially as an owner or an owner operator. However, you buy a truck, man, you can find used trucks, 50,000. You get a truck, you get insurance on it. The truck does 8, 10, 12,000 a week. You pay your driver, you pay your gas, you pay your insurance, you put some aside for maintenance. There's a nice margin of profit for the owners. You buy another truck, you buy another truck. You, as an organization, make friends with dispatchers who dispatch for businesses that need truckers. You're first on their list because maybe you give them a little incentive. Nothing illegal, but hey, you send us this business. Here's a gift card for you as a token of our appreciation. You can write that off. There's all kinds of ways to make things successful, man. The organization was meant to do good. There is a positive light at the end of the tunnel. It's never happened. Will it ever happen? It's hard to say. It doesn't look too good. But I've read that third part of the Constitution. Should I even say it? I've read the third part of what's expected. And I know. And it's not happening. And the NF has only gotten a bad rap. Imagine the NF owns businesses. Imagine the NF does this, does that, gives back to the community. The violence goes down. In a generation, society's outlook on the NF could change. There's also goals to get into politics, to help the people. Not just our people, but people in the communities where we live.
So, bro, let me ask you something, right?
What's up?
Let me ask you something, right? So, through our 10 years of being affiliated with the organization and all that, right? Working for them, I've come to terms. I've seen many different businesses come out. A lot of times they were done for money laundering, such as barbershops, tattoo shops, nightclubs, adult stores, all kinds of different things that I personally know of and was involved in. And what I kind of witnessed, right, because we used to put our stuff in adjustable bonds and stuff like that, the money that we were generating in and playing the stock market. What I come to realize is the expectation of money quota that was expected every month. Once you have that money to establish and start putting it into legitimate businesses, the higher ups still wanted that kickback that they were getting all these months. So instead of them being patient, like, okay, let them establish this. They've already done their work. They've been out there for 5, 6 years. They've made this much money. They've been contributing this much money. You know what I mean? A lot of times, in order for you to maintain that quota that's expected, you got to continue to balance illicit activities at the same time. I've been out there where I've seen successful businesses, right? And a lot of times they're using them instead of for an end game goal, like construction companies, whatever, or whatever it may be out there, limo services, even some legitimate adult services, whatever it may be. I noticed though that in order for people to have the expectations of what's expected for them a monthly, they have to continue those illicit activities, because with illicit activities, the money comes in fast. Once you legitimize that money, the flow comes in the long run. It's a good thing, but it's not as much as what they're used to. I mean, I was out there one time where they were putting pressure like, we need more money every month. And we're already kicking in 5,000 a month, 10,000 a month. And they're putting even higher restrictions that they want more from us, to where we're jeopardizing ourselves out there in the streets, And plus, like you said, man, nowadays with after Operation Black Widow, there's indictments like every other year. Every location's getting hit. So once you start to establish all these monies and resources in these banks, the feds are confiscating it every time, over and over again. So it's kind of hard to really, comprehend that there's ever going to be an end game. As long as the feds keep on doing what they do, which is have their foot on the NF's neck, there's never going to be no success. And especially with all the internal conflict, man. I get the end game. It totally makes sense. And it's something that I was always taught. The whole purpose of every organization and every cause and movement is to be self-supportive, being able to operate independently and take care of its members. Therefore, you need a means of finances. You know what I'm saying? But then again, there's the big question too, and we all have this question: where's all the money going? You know what I mean?
What I've heard? I've heard that there's a couple of big homies. I'm not going to point out anybody particular, that have beautiful stock portfolios, and their families are living way above their means for what they do as a family, maybe on the streets or whatnot. That's what I've heard. I don't see how it could not be possible by the amount of things that trickle up, But
you can't bail out or find a lawyer for a canal that's off parole that just got a case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you're expendable. Okay, you're no longer in a position to make money. We're not going to take money out of our bread basket. So let's just hang you off to dry.
You know what I would focus on, bro? I'll tell you what. With what I just said in mind, and there's more to it that I may or may not get into, but what I would focus on is, just like all these truck drivers on here, I would have a legitimate regiment on the streets. Your job is to seek funding and loans through people who haven't been in trouble, through people that already have established businesses. You just show them the cash and be like, look, you can hold this $500,000, whatever it might be. Get a few trucks, start a trucking company. Hire me as the general manager, but they already know who you are. You know what I'm saying? And eventually sign over the business. I'm not interested no more. You're now the CEO. That person that's in charge doesn't necessarily have to be a C. It could be a C's son that's never been in trouble. You know what I mean? Where no legal funds will ever go into that. It's purely a startup company. Get it off the ground. It'll go. It'll go. No funding's coming out of that initially. All the funding, there's no 25%. There's no this. All of it goes into building that business. Now, when you have a fleet of 10, 15, 20 trucks, that's when you can start looking at other businesses, and you don't do kickbacks off of a legitimate business. That doesn't go back into the group. Is it supposed to? According to the rules, yes. That's not smart though. What you do is you put it in the business. Anybody who comes out that's not needed at that time in a regiment, because we're trying to get rid of illegal regiments. Anyone who's not needed, they go get their fucking Class A.
Yeah.
We give them their own truck. The company pays them while they try to build their credit where they can get another truck. Man, in just 5, 6, 7 years, man, you can have 100 vehicles, bro. And you do everything by the book, just like a real trucking company would. But you just moved 100 people who would be out in a regiment doing illicit shit, risking their ass, going back to prison. And hey, could you tell them, hey, on the side, can you donate 25% to this charity? Can you do this? Can you do that? As long as nothing illegals happen, you can do whatever you want with your paycheck. You feel me? There's ways to go about doing things that the government can't take your shit. but you have to cross your I's and dot your T's. And that's why the NF sought to look for new alliances within the professional community.
Do you think that this policy is still being enforced, bro? Because think about it. How many people do you think out there are functioning right now at this time? I mean, let's give a rough number.
Nationwide, statewide, what are you talking?
Statewide.
Statewide, a couple hundred.
Couple hundred, right?
Yeah, 100 that are extremely functioning.
Okay, so each if you're just a regular NF associate, you're going to have to pay your monthly dues, which is anywhere from 150 to 200 bucks a month. You know what I'm saying? So you got maybe, let's say you got maybe 80 to 90 people out there that are assisting a regiment, that are on the books, that are NF associates. 200 bucks a month, 90 people. You know what I mean? 18 racks. And then you got your NF members, or you've got your NF associates that are running the regiment that have to do their kickbacks 25% of what they make. So that's a lot of money being generated every month, bro. You know what I'm saying? And that's a low number. I think there's way more than 100. I mean, I think there's probably like 50 people just alone in Salinas that are functioning probably out there or assisting in one form or fashion. I know in San Jose, there'd be anywhere like at one time, anywhere from 50 to 75 people that were NF associates that were out there plugged into a regiment, a crew out there working and operating. And then you also got those nowadays, those people that are involved in music industry or whatnot, that they're having to give kickbacks. I don't care. They're kicking in some money. They're contributing. So that's a lot of money being generated a month. And what used to always take me by surprise, right, is two things. I don't know if you've ever seen this. You've been to Quidden on the 6 yard a lot, and you've been around a lot of C's. I've seen C's that had nobody financially looking after them at all. At all. You know what I'm saying? And I used to trip on that. You know what I'm saying? Like, all this money that we're generating, I get it. We're supposed to put a portion supposed to go into the main bank, the regiment bank on the streets, but you're also supposed to have a paying scale that goes back to every member to where they're getting their books fattened up at one time. I think for a minute it was supposed to be 2,500 bucks was the limit, or 2,000, I think, up in the Bay or Corcoran. We were supposed to fatten their pockets, and then we started going on to the next member. But there was so many members I've seen out there, because once the money gets dried up and they have to restructure the regiments, it always seemed like the higher ups were the ones that were fattening their pockets. You get what I'm saying? And the foot soldiers out there that are putting in work, that have been generating money, that have been operating, that put themselves at risk, that caught a little bit of time, it seems like they weren't getting no benefits, man, no financial assistance whatsoever.
I'll tell you what, for a while, man, me and Eminem, we actually had damn near Paycheck Friday. You know what I mean? Where everybody who worked, besides what they make, we'd split up a portion of another portion of what came in, and everybody get like $300-500 depending on the month, weekly. You know what I'm saying? Just, hey, slide through Friday, come check us out, man. Come by. Usually there's a bar we go to, whatever.
But hey, I got a question for you.
That's just a small scale. Imagine what you could do if you have a bunch of legal businesses. Everybody could be taken care of, because it's not a crime to send money to an inmate at all from a legitimate business. If you can account for all your dollars, just like any real company can, you can send money to whoever the fuck you want.
But I mean, wasn't each regiment banks only supposed to get up to about 10,000, and then you start to establish a whole new one?
Man, it depends on what version of the Constitution you look at, bro. It's been anywhere from 1,000 and 2,500 to 5,000 and 10,000. It changes by what version.
See, I remember I was being taught, right, before I was being requested to go out there and function. This was during a time period when you were put on probation and all that, right? And where I'm learning all this stuff, and they were breaking down that, you'll be put on a crew, and they tell you the different activities, and they're schooling you before I got out there. You know what I mean? I was being laced up by a Cat 3 about the responsibilities as going on out there in the streets, functioning with a regiment. And this was pre-Black Widow, when it was a little bit, you understand how it was pre-Black Widow. It was a whole different type of, the regiment operations were kind of more old school. You know what I'm saying? They were supposed to have street crews, hit squads, and then you also were any of the illicit money that was put in by the crew. I remember seeing something, I don't know where it came from, but it was shown to me that there was supposed to be a paying scale for all members from any money that's been made through legal enterprises. Yeah. Like, each crew was supposed to establish their own type of legitimate businesses. You know what I mean? And the regiments weren't supposed to be too deep. So that's what people don't realize. There was a time it was different. Either you were on the books or you weren't on the books. If you were on the books, that means everything that you were contributing was supposed to be accounted for and logged. Okay, he's paying his monthlies. This is on the books. It seemed like years later, they were gathering monthlies from their foot soldiers, right? Their associates, and nothing was being accounted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it seems like now, man, you know, I get everything you said. If everything was applied like how you're saying it, everything would work.
Yeah.
It would be a positive, beautiful thing, and people would flourish. But it seems like now it's almost turned into where how the other group operates, where people are benefiting individually off the streets that they have out there in the streets, to where instead of this going into a main bank, it's going into their pocket. Since they have that authority position, you know what I mean? Whether the street regiment commander and they're locked up somewhere like in Salinas Valley or Solano, or back then it would be the Bay. It seems like if they're benefiting, they're misappropriating those funds for their own personal needs and desires, and they have that much control over what they decide to do with it. You know?
I'll tell you another thing too. The reason, you know, that it was, you know, that, you know, me and Tibbs talked about this many hours. The reason you look for outside professional type people to function with alongside of you, not necessarily knowing 100%, maybe some. There might be some that are worthy of being pulled would never go into prison. And this is something that we've discussed many times, is because you get accountants and stuff. There's always going to be the lazy dude. There's always going to be like, well, let's run this 10,000 through the bar. No, absolutely not. While you could get away with it 100 times, the one time you don't get away with it, you lose everything. You know what I mean? So the reason when going outside the box is to put normal professional people inside of these positions of responsibility that control the finances and have a lawyer on deck to make sure, okay, these are the damn rules that you need to be successful in this business. These are the a check and an X. You got a whole fucking list on your bulletin board in your office. You can do this, you can't do that, period. And it has to be followed to. You can have homies working there and shit, but all the little, let's take that, what we just made over here shit and run it through here. No, absolutely not. Can't do it.
You know what it comes down to? What it comes down to, Rojo, is this, man. This is just a simple thing, man. And I brought this up way back then. It comes down to greed and need. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
People ain't like, I used to think about it back in the days. I'm like, man, why are we out here pushing product? Why don't we find all these dudes that are pushing the product? And why don't we go over there and say, if you want the representation, the backing of the mob to do what you're doing, you're going to have to kick in once a month. You know what I mean? We'll protect you. We'll do this and that. We'll have our hit squads and all that.
Violence.
You know what I mean?
One day they're going to be like, oh, I don't got it this month. One day this. Oh, I only made this month. And they're lying. And then you have to do something about it.
Well, if you know that they're balling, you're going to know that they're balling. You know what I mean? There's no excuse. You know what I mean? That's when cars get took. You know what I mean?
I get it, man. Extortion eventually is going to lead to a bad thing, though. 90-something% of the time.
But it keeps your hands clean from the other stuff.
From you, they're going to do this, and then you have to respond, or you look, the next person you're trying to push up on is going to be like, oh, that dude fucking just moved over there.
We did that a few times with people, right? And our sales pitch was the same all the time, man. Like, you know, you're wearing that red end hat, man. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get locked up eventually, and you're going to take from our tiendas. You're going to take from our security. If you want the backing of the people, we represent the people. Yeah. If you want to continue to ball like you're balling, you're going to have to kick in. You know what I'm saying?
You know, when I had got Mike involved in the regiment, you know, which was a blessing, we took care of everything financially. We didn't ask nobody for nothing. Like, out of their profits, it was just me and Mike. And we were still way above, way above. You know what I mean? You have all these banks that have 2,500 in it, 5 G's. They're starving, bro. How about we got 100 G's at the homeboy's cousin's house right now in cash? You know what I mean? Like, that kind of a trip. Instead of using all these things to just stockpile for certain people, okay, you got a couple white collar people at the very top. Everybody else is on fucking Section 8.
Yeah, true.
If you sacrifice just a little bit for a short period of time, if you develop an appropriate game plan, everybody could move up to the middle class. Your people up here on Wall Street, they might move over to Central Park for a while, but Wall Street will come back. You know, and you're
So
exactly right. It's all about greed. It's always more and more and more and more and more.
people want more. They're not willing to sacrifice. I brought it before. They want that instant gratification of that instant come up now. They're not willing to sacrifice to say, look, in the long term, for longevity, for safety, for financial security. You know what I mean? That's where everything gets caught up, man. And too many people, I mean, I see it time and time again. You get these people out there and they're coming home with nothing. And they start to get a little bit of something and then they don't know what to do with it. They become reckless. They start making poor decisions and they want more and more and more. And half, I mean, let's keep it real. Half of them, they hide behind the bandera in those two letters to proceed and get what they want. And then once they get what they want, they don't know what to do with it. You know what I'm saying? It's the greed of power, control. And you got to take, you know what I mean? When you don't take care of your manpower, you don't take care of your hand thing, you don't do right and you become greedy, is where people, you start to have the dissension and where you start to have people fall off time and time again. You know what I mean? You're only going to get by so long with greed and being a bully. With greed, you have to take care of your manpower. You have to take care of your people. When you take care of your manpower and you take care of your people, you're not going to have people that are at odds that are going to want to flip on you. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if you betray people and you are disloyal to people, you reap what you sow. You know what I'm saying? There's a cause and effect in everything we do, and some people don't realize it, man. And that's why time and time again you have all these scenarios that play out the way they play out. It's not necessarily because some of these people are weak-minded. It's because you're abusing and mistreating your fucking gente, all for your own pockets. People get tired of it. And it's like, what, you supposed to be accepting to be someone's a doormat? Nah, you're not supposed to, man. Everybody's supposed to push forward at the same pace and the same sync. And if you're not benefiting from something that you're putting your time and energy into, man, it's a cold game, bro. And it's just the reality of it, man. That's why they've never been able to establish everything that the end game goals, to be financially supportive, to be legitimize everything that they're doing. It's because of that greed, you know. But let's remember who we're dealing with. We have some very brilliant minds, but you're employing criminals. You're employing people who the only time they have had any type of discipline is when they're in the cell up in the level 4 yard up in the shoe. This is the only time. Anywhere else, they can't maintain it. Once they get out there, they fall back into their old behaviors. That business acumen, that sense of discipline, all that shit gets thrown out the window, and it becomes greed.
The goal was basically, for lack of a better way to explain it, I mean, this isn't how it is, you know, verbatim, but to be two separate entities, man. You know, you're always going to have prison and gangs as part of the NF, as part of the DNA. But imagine paroling, and instead of reporting to, let's just say, Flacco to go sell dope, you're reporting to John Hernandez at J&L Trucking, and you're going to drive a truck. And listen, you're going to benefit from working, but also at the end of the day, as that company grows, you're basically a shareholder. It keeps growing and growing. You don't got to drive no more. You sit at the house. You go on trips with your women and your family, and you're getting them royalties as the company grows. Just like anybody else who's CEO that's on the board, as members, you would basically be board members. You're not on paper. You know, you might be a consultant. You might be this. You might be that, and you're getting a fucking fat ass paycheck. And with a little bit of sacrifice, hard work, and the ability to find people to function alongside you that aren't necessarily criminals, but are still worthy of the cause, it can be successful. And that's what some of the brilliant minds told me when I became a member, that this was the end game. You know what I mean? Yeah, in prison, you might have to hustle. Man, if you do things right on the streets, that could be out of the whole picture completely.
Yeah.
It takes a couple generations, but we've already been doing this shit for 5 generations now. That's the end game. Anyway, this is what I was schooled on. This is the direction the O was supposed to go. You know, I don't have, without the paper, you know, the stack of papers that I read, I can't tell you word for word, but I'm giving you the gist of it. Total legitimate corporation is the ultimate goal, to take care of anybody deemed worthy on a professional very high-end corporate type level. Maybe it'll happen one day. You got to work for things you want, and that takes a lot of work.
No, it won't. No, it won't.
Yeah, well, brother, you just gotta knuckle down, stud. But
No, it won't.
this is your boy Rojo. Just wanted to share that with you guys who never knew the end game. Maybe I'll elaborate more on that because I do know more. We'll see. We'll holler at you guys later on the live. Rojo and Flaco, and we're out this piece.